Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Krishna
Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Radha Shiv
Jai
Sari
Shri
Gaur
Krishna
Bhakta
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri
Jai
Advaita
Shri Krishna
Gadadhar
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri
Sari
Advaita
Gaur
Gadadhar
Bhakta Vrinda Jai Shri
Shri
Krishna
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri
Nanda
Advaita
Shri
Gadadhar
Advaita Gadadhar Shiv Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Shri Krishna.
Sri Guru Karanda Bhagwan Ki
New chapter.
Yes, today's new chapter 13.
Yeah, 13.
Arjuna Uvacha Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetram Kshetragyameva Cha Etadveditum Ichhami Jnanam Gyeyam Cha Keshava Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetramityabhidhiyate Etadyo Veti Tam Prahu Kshetragya iti tadvidaha. Arjuna said, "O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, pursuer, the enjoyer, Purush, the enjoyer, and the field, and the knower of the field, and knowledge, and the object of knowledge." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field."
Okay. So we'll start with the purport here. Okay. Arjuna was inquisitive about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, Kshetra, the field, Kshetragya, its knower, and knowledge, and the object of knowledge. When he inquired about all these, Krishna said that this body is called the field, and that one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. This body is the field of activity for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul is entrapped in material existence, and he attempts to lord it over material nature. And so, according to his capacity to dominate material nature, he gets a field of activity. That field of activity is the body. And what is this body? And what is the body? The body is made of senses.
The conditioned soul wants to enjoy sense gratification, and according to his capacity to enjoy sense gratification, is offered a body or field of activity. Therefore, the body is called kshetra, or the field of activity for the conditioned soul. Now, the person who should not identify himself with the body is called kshetragya, the knower of the field. It is not very difficult to understand the difference between the field and its knower, the body and the knower of the body. Any person can consider that from childhood to old age, he undergoes so many changes of body, and yet is still one person remaining.
Madhavam.
Thus, there is a difference between the knower of the field of the activities and the actual field of activities. A living conditioned soul can thus understand that he is different from the body. It is described in the beginning, they know asmin, that the living entity is within the body, and that the body is changing from childhood to boyhood, and from boyhood to youth, and from youth to old age. And the person who owns the body knows that the body is changing. The owner is distinctly kshetragya. Sometimes we think, I am happy, I am a man, I am a woman, I am a dog, I am a cat.
These are the bodily designations of the knower, but the knower is different from the body. Although we may use many articles, our clothes, etc., we know that we are different from the things used. Similarly, we also understand by a little contemplation that we are different from the body. I, you, or anyone else who owns the body is called kshetragya, the knower of the field of activities, and the body is called kshetra, the field of activities itself.
In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the knower of the body, the living entity, and the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord are described. In the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the relationship between the individual soul and the super soul in regard to devotional service are described. The superior position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the subordinate position of the individual soul are definitely defined in these chapters. Madhav Prabhu, do complete.
Yeah, the living entities are subordinate under all circumstances, but in their forgetfulness, they are suffering. When enlightened by pious activities, they approach the Supreme Lord in different capacities as the distressed, those in want of money, the inquisitives, and those in search of knowledge. That is also described. Now, starting with the 13th chapter, how the living entity comes into contact with the material nature and how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord through the different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and the discharge of devotional service are explained. Although the living entity is completely different from the material body, he somehow becomes related. Thus also is this is also explained. This also is explained.
Haribo, any questions, comments about this beginning of a technical chapter here? In fact, the last 6 chapters, Prabhupada does describe it here. He says, now starting with the 13th chapter, how the living entity comes in contact with material nature and how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord through different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and the discharge of devotional service are explained. So the first 6 chapters are like an introduction in the sense that they help us understand Sankhya Yoga, and then the process and the simple process of Buddhi Yoga / Karma Yoga, which are the beginning of bhakti, using our intelligence and our work to serve Krishna. And then the middle 6 chapters describe pure devotional service. But now we're going to get a description of how this all fits together. And therefore, it's very valuable knowledge, but it's sometimes a little bit, it's highly philosophical.
Here's a sort of a mangled version of an analogy that Ram Dass uses. When you're driving a car, especially if you drive it a lot, it's really effective to feel like you are the car. It's completely integrated into the direction of it, and to into the acceleration, into the braking. It just becomes automatic. And but it's something that, hopefully you can get out of and not associate, But I have tried to help someone learn how to drive who hadn't driven when she was like 30 years old. And this idea of feeling at one with the car was totally alien to her, and she had a hell of a time driving. So you can imagine, how the easier it is to be in your body and to feel harmonious with it.
That's important. But
yes, but you have to be able to let it out, let it go.
Prabhupada would use that example of the car and the driver often, because he would say that just as we drive a car, we use this car to go to place, so the soul uses this body as a car to navigate around the material world. And depending, some people have Mercedes-Benz and some people have old used cars. Depending on the kind of car you get, you can only do so much. So a human body is a really good body and a really good car. And it allows us to actually examine all this, because the dogs and the cats and the trees and the monkeys and the grass can't ask the questions about what is nature, what is the enjoyer, what is the field, the body, and who is the owner of the field, that is the soul. These questions can't be asked. So this is very important. And it's important to understand how gurus like Prabhupada, they use very simple explanations to try to teach us complex ideas. And so, well, there's one place here, and in the purport. You want to say something, Sridhar?
The norm of the body is the individual body is the living entity, but also there is another norm of the body, which is the supreme soul, super soul, and there's Paramatma is the norm of all the bodies, where we just know our own individual body. So there are two norms of the body. Inside the body, there is the living entity and the super soul that accompanies the living entity since time immemorial. And the field of activities is where all things take place, like stage. That's the body. And the body is the combination of senses, and the senses are constantly trying to find satisfaction. And so all of this is playing out, and we are witnessing and identifying ourselves with the body, but we're not.
And now this is important. The conditioned soul wants to enjoy sense gratification, and according to his capacity to enjoy sense gratification, he is offered a body or a field of activity. So our different bodies provide us different capacities. In other words, we can have a 100-watt light bulb, it's very bright, or you can have a night light, it's not very bright. So depending on the kind of light you have, you use the same energy, which is coming from the electrical station. That same energy, which is the soul, in connection to the super soul, is allowed to display different qualities in this world according to the body that's bestowed upon that soul. And of course, there's a science behind why we get what body, according to our karma. So we get a certain, therefore, the body is called kshetra, or the field of activity for the conditioned soul. But the problem is that we identify with the kshetra, not knowing that we're the kshetragya, the knower. We conflate those two, just like Bill was saying. Someone gets the feel of the car so much, and it's good. We really do need to understand how to use our bodies effectively in this world. But we get such a good feel for it that we think, I am it. And we aren't. We're transcendental. Actually, we have a constitutional position which is eternal, and it doesn't die. Any other thoughts or questions? Madhavaji?
Yeah. So one thing, as Rudrani Mataji was saying, that there are two things: we ourselves as a soul and super soul Krishna. So those two are in the body, but Krishna only witnesses the activity. He is not part, anyway involved with any of the activities performed by the body through the senses of the soul, the individual soul. So sometimes it identifies with the body and does all kinds of undesirable activities, but simply super soul is also there, but simply witnessing, no way, never involved in any of the activities which is performed by that individual, that soul, which identifying that I am this body.
It's described sometimes like two birds in a tree. You've got the active bird, and then you have the witness bird. And the active bird is jumping from branch to branch, tasting different fruits. And each time it tastes the fruits, it may like it for a while, and then he spits it out and says, "No, that's not for me." And then he picks up another one, and, "Oh, this is very nice, I'll keep this one." But then he finishes it, and he has to go to another fruit, and he says, "Oh, this is no good." And right behind the active bird is the witness bird. And the witness bird is just flying behind saying, "When will he turn around and see me and stop looking just at these fruits in the material world?" And that witness bird, of course, upadrasta sumantascha, means he's the overseer and permitter. That's why we have free will, and Krishna doesn't interfere with free will. If we make a certain amount of progress in spiritual life, either by the spiritual master or by some sort of good intuition from the super soul, he may influence us, but he certainly doesn't dictate to us what we're to do, and he allows us to blunder if we're going to blunder. And he, because we have free will, the choice of whether to turn around and look at him or not. Limited, yes. It's limited to either turning towards Krishna or not turning towards Krishna. When we turn away from Krishna, then we make decisions in darkness, and when we turn towards Krishna, we make decisions well informed.
So as long as we consider that individual get so much absorbed in this activity through senses, in the bodily activity, then obviously it gets so much absorbed, it does not turn to Krishna who is witnessing there. So unless, as you Prabhuji said, turns, they realizes there is such thing, a witness there, and turns the attention. If it doesn't, then of course it keeps going, getting more and more entangled and never ending process, trying one fruit over the other, and life goes on, one body to the other and all that. So unless one gets out of this bodily concept of life, one can never turn towards Krishna. So that's what is described here. There are different kind of people, even having those bodily activities, but they try to know, and there are various four types of people who pay attention and try to know this witness bird, super soul.
I was just thinking that we could even an analogous understanding would be, if you come into a room and there's a person playing a video game, they're absorbed in the video game and they've got headphones on, so they're just listening to that. You can walk around and they're not even notice you because they're so totally absorbed in this other reality, the video game, that maybe the only way you can get to notice them is to put a piece of prasadam in front of them, and they might go, "Oh, gee," and I'll eat something while they're playing. Or we can pull the microphone, the headphones off for a minute and go, "Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare." And they'll put the headphones back on and keep playing, but they did hear. So we're so absorbed in this alternative universe that we're incapable of turning. But that's where the process of Krishna consciousness comes in. It it's an awakening of our consciousness, the real consciousness. Any other questions? We can go to the next verse. It's quite a good verse. It has very nice explanation and a very quite long purport.
क्षेत्रज्ञ चापि मां विद्धि सर्वक्षेत्रेषु भारत क्षेत्रज्ञयोर्ज्ञानं यत्तज्ज्ञानं मतं मम. O sky of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion.
Here is we're going to directly hear from Krishna about what the super soul is.
Bill? Bill, could you read?
Bill?
Okay. While discussing the subject of the body and the knower of the body, the soul and the super soul, we shall find three different topics of study: the Lord, the living entity, and matter. In every field of activities, in every body, there are two souls, the individual soul and the super soul. Because the super soul is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Krishna says, I am also the knower, but I am not the individual knower of the body. I am the super knower. I am present in every body as the Paramatma, or super soul.
One who studies the subject matter of the field of activity and the knower of the field very minutely in terms of this Bhagavad Gita can attain to knowledge. The Lord says, I am the knower of the field of activities in every individual body. The individual may be the knower of his own body, and he is not in knowledge of other bodies. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present as the Super Soul in all bodies, knows everything about all bodies. He knows all the different bodies of all various species of life. A citizen may know everything about his patch of land, but the king knows not only his palace, but all the properties possessed by the individual citizens. Mother Prabhu?
Similarly, one may be the proprietor of the body individually, but the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of all the bodies. The king is the original proprietor of the kingdom, and the citizen in this and the citizen in the secondary citizen is the secondary proprietor. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the supreme proprietor of all bodies. The body consists of the senses. The Supreme Lord is Rishikesa, which means the controller of the senses. He is the original controller of the senses, just as the king is the original controller of all the activities of the state. The citizens are secondary controller. The Lord says, I am also the knower. This means that he is the super knower. The individual soul knows only his particular body. In the Vedic literature, it is stated as follows. Kshetrani,
Yeah, go ahead. Prabhu.
Kshetrani hi sarvatrayani bijatam chapi subhe tani veti sa yogatma tata kshetra na uchyate.
Yeah. This chapter we want to read?
This body is called the Kshetra, and within it dwells the owner of the body and the Supreme Lord, who knows both the body and the owner of the body. Therefore, he is called the knower of all fields. The distinction between the field of activities, the knower of activities, and the supreme knower of activities is described as follows. Perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the individual soul, and the constitution of the supersoul is known in terms of Vedic literature as Gyan. That is the opinion of Krishna. To understand both the soul and the supersoul as one yet distinct is knowledge. No, okay. One who does, that's right, I missed the last sentence. One who does not understand the field of activity and the knower of activity is not in perfect knowledge. Now I'm done. Can Rudrani read?
Yes.
One has to understand the position of Prakriti, Purusha, the enjoyer of nature, and Ishvara, the knower who dominates or controls nature and the individual soul. One should not confuse the three in their different capacities. One should not confuse the painter, the painting, and the easel. This material world, which is the field of activities, is nature, and the enjoyer of nature is the living entity. And above them both is the supreme controller, the personality of Godhead. It is stated in the Vedic language in the Shrutisvatara Upanishad 112, Bhogta Bhogyam Priritaram Chamadva Sarvam Proktam Tivridam Brahmanam Vitat. There are three Brahman conceptions. Prakriti is Brahman as the field of activities, and the Jiva, individual soul, is also Brahman and is trying to control material nature. And the controller of both of them is also Brahman, but he is the factual controller. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
In this chapter, it will also be explained that out of the two knowers, one is fallible and the other is infallible. One is superior and the other is subordinate. One who understands the two knowers of the field to be one and the same contradicts the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who states here very clearly, I am also the knower of the field of activity. One who misunderstands a rope to be a serpent is not in knowledge. There are different kinds of bodies and there are different honors of the bodies, because each individual soul has the individual capacity for loading it over material nature. There are different bodies, but the Supreme also is present in them as the controller. The word chair is significant, for it indicates the total number of bodies. That is the opinion of Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan. Krishna is the super soul present in each and every body apart from the individual soul. And Krishna explicitly says here that real knowledge is to know that the super soul is the controller of both the field of activities and the finite enjoyer.
This is the first of many verses dealing with the nature of the supersoul or the Paramatma versus the nature of the soul. And are there any questions or comments about this at this point?
Yeah, this is the qualified dualism approach, and there are other interpretations of this. That, and it's actually which that have a much more Advaita approach to it, which is consistent with the text. You can see it either way, and I understand that certainly in this tradition, That's the way it's interpreted. But
Well-
there are other ways of doing it.
Srila Prabhupada very clearly wanted to establish the supremacy of bhakti, and that's why he calls it Bhagavad Gita as it is. And there are certainly many ways to understand the Bhagavad Gita, except what we want to do is try to understand it according to how Krishna understands it. And we know how Krishna understands it because we hear from our acharyas how that is. So, and we hear from Krishna too, but the acharyas amplify that by giving us real world instructions, like Prabhupada's instructions of how to understand the words of Krishna are here in this purport, so that we can clearly understand that this is as you said, qualified dualism, but actually, according to Lord Chaitanya, our understanding is it's a chintya beta tattva. And a chintya means inconceivable, oneness, and difference. So that we understand that inconceivably, the living entity is one and different from Krishna, and not one in the sense of being qualitatively or in the sense of having the same qualities of the Lord in a small amount, but never one in quantity. So Krishna is described to be nityo nityananam, chaitanas chaitananam. So we're all eternal because Krishna is eternal, and we all have sentience because Krishna is a supreme sentient. So whatever we have is dependent on Krishna, like a spark in a fire. So as long as we stay dancing in the bonfire, the little sparks dancing in the fire, falling in and then dancing up again, they stay very hot and bright. But when they fly off onto the beach, 20 yards away, that little ember goes out because the little ember no longer is connected to the source of its source of its fire. It can be once again, when returned into the fire, given that same fiery quality, but it doesn't have that quality separate from Krishna. And so this chapter is really meant to teach us how to discern the difference between the fire and the spark, and to not deny the spark its position as having some power, but that power is subordinate to and dependent on the main fire, which is the super soul.
Yeah, as you Prabhu is saying about, Will Prabhu is saying about the duality. Yes, so as you also described Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Chintya Veda. So simultaneously one and different, but and the same. And the example comes actually also in a green tree there are there is bird, and so bird always remains bird, because bird is a green bird and the tree is green, so it will look like merging, but there is no merging. It never happens. It's bird is individual and tree both are different. It will appear to be merging. That's what the concept of liberation, all this impersonalists talk about, that merging into Brahman, but that is not a fact, a reality.
An interesting thing is that this is the month of Damodar, Kartik, and in this month we sing this wonderful Damodar Astakam. And that Damodar Astakam describes the loving relationship of Mother Yashoda with Krishna. And to put it into context, I mean, this is very philosophical, and we should understand the philosophy. But in this one song, we see how here is a soul, Mother Yashoda, who is completely one with Krishna in the sense that she and Krishna have complete connection, but that connection isn't a merging or a loss of identity of the individual soul. It's actually a connection of love, so much so that God, Krishna, takes himself, who is the supreme controller, who is the man who manifests all the universes from him. He puts himself in a position where he is actually totally subordinate to Mother Yashoda. He's being chased by Mother Yashoda. He's afraid of Mother Yashoda's punishment coming up. He shows complete absorption in that connection, and he's giving Mother Yashoda so much opportunity to completely love him.
An urgent message. To anyone with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, this discovery could save your life.
Oops. So for us, we can study this, and it's very important. But we also know that through bhakti, Krishna will give us clues as we become more able to let our intellect take a back seat to the heart. We don't give up our intellect because that would mean fanaticism, but we have to let the heart actually work as the organ of perception with dealing with Krishna, because that's how Krishna is understood, through our heart, not through our brain.
And I just wanted to make one comment from Prabhuji. This Damodar Leela of Krishna and between and Mother Yasoda, as we know in Gita, that actually Krishna says that he is independent of everybody. Everybody depends on him. So he's independent, but at the same time, he loses his independence in case of Mother Yasoda, and he let her bind him, because who can control? He's supreme controller. We read here that he's supreme controller. He controls everything, but he gets controlled. Again, he loses his independence to his devotee and gets himself controlled. There are numerous examples of his pastimes with his devotees, that he's become subservient. He serves his devotees. So it's a very interesting relationship. That's what says bhakti. Again, the love, devoted, pure love, actually, he gets conquered. He serves his devotee who loves him, who has pure love for him. That's very interesting.
And in that love, Krishna can reveal everything to the devotee. In other words, we're looking to try to crack the code of the divine. But actually, if we have a loving relationship with Krishna, then Krishna gives us the code.
Hare Krishna, Rinaji and Vinodji.
Haribol, Rina.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Haribol.
Haribol.
So one more thing is, so we have a soul, right? And the soul is, individual soul is supposed to be part and parcel of the super soul, right? Of the
Supreme.
Yes.
Of the Supreme, right? And the individual soul is related to the Supreme, right? Or the super soul directly. So
Yes, go on.
yeah. So in the body, when we say we have the individual soul, but we are also saying that there is a super soul in the body, right? So is it there, or there is a relation to the super soul, which is because the individual soul is also the part and parcel of the same supreme soul, right?
Okay, the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme. Now, the presence of the super soul is only in the material world. As long as we are embodied, he accompanies us as the super soul, with guidance, with direction. And it is explained that when the super soul manifests externally, that is the guru. In other words, the guru is the representation of the super soul that is guiding us toward a life of spiritual bliss, knowledge, and eternity. So we are part and parcel of Krishna, part and parcel of Krishna. And then the presence of the super soul, like I just said, is only while we are in bodies. In the spiritual world, there is no super soul. The function of the super soul is just because we are bound to matter, and is there guiding us, if we want to listen, of course.
Yeah. So isn't it more, isn't it more of a connection to the super soul, right? To the supreme?
Actually, it's understood that while we're in the material world and we're not conscious of Krishna, even in the form of a bug or a dog or whatever, super soul is there with the individual soul, and the super soul is in there with the individual soul as human beings too. But if and when a human being actually takes to Krishna consciousness and becomes pure in Krishna consciousness, then that super soul actually Krishna, the super soul in a sense bows out, and Krishna in the form that the devotee wants to worship him in takes that place. So super soul is there for those of us who are kind of out of it. He's especially there to watch over those who aren't too conscious.
There's a verse in the Bhagavatam that says that the absolute truth manifests himself in three phases: as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So the partial representation is Paramatma. Brahman is the all-pervading energy of the Supreme, like the emanation of his rays. And of course, Bhagavan is the person, the personality of Godhead. So Paramatma is the representation of Bhagavan in the material atmosphere and present in everything that exists.
Actually, when we get down into the idea, ultimately it's said in the Vedas that within each and every atom, super soul exists, so that the presence of God is completely everywhere, surcharged through all matter.
And also, for a person who I heard somebody speak about how somebody may say, well, I really don't believe in God, or I am agnostic, I'm not sure, one of the two. And the fact of the matter is that everything that we see, everything that exists, is a manifestation of the Supreme. It says by his energy, he's manifesting everything. There is nothing that is not part of the Supreme Lord. So just by looking at a tree or looking at a table or looking at a glass of milk, that is the energy of the Supreme present. So how can we say I don't believe in him? Because there's nothing but Krishna and his energy, and we are part of the energy of the Supreme Lord, the Jiva souls, marginal potency.
And we studied 4 seed verses of the Bhagavatam, and one of those verses says, know that anything you see separate from me is just Maya. And if we see something separate from Krishna, we are seeing in an illusory way.
Something which is not real.
It's not the proper vision.
Yeah. Good questions.
Yeah. I mean, you have the Virat Swarup, right? So there's a Virat Swarup, and we are all, if you look at the Virat Swarup, or the Kshirodakshaya Vishnu.
Yes.
So Kshirodakshaya Vishnu enters into each and every.
Well, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu is the super soul.
Is the super soul.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. There, the 3 main Vishnus, you got Karanadakshaya Vishnu, who manifests all the universes. And then Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and that manifests everything within each universe.
And that's the super soul of the universe.
And that's like the super soul of the universe. Is the super soul of the universe. And then Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, he manifests as super soul within all living entities. Mm-hmm. So you have these 3 manifestations of Vishnu, which are portions of Krishna.
Different functions. They're different
functions of Krishna. Yeah. But the point is that each one, manifests from the macro to the less macro to the micro.
And they're the super soul.
Yeah.
And so there's the immanence of God everywhere. And of course, the scientists will say everything comes from a big bang, and we know that there's a singular beginning, but instead of the big bang, we know it's the big breath. Yeah. Because it's the breath of Vishnu that blows all the universes out and manifests all the things that are here. And then it's retracted, and everything's retracted into him again. So anyway, these cyclical phenomena
I'll buy that. It's with a telescope and a microscope, you can push the mystery back, but you can't eliminate the mystery. You just make it a bigger mystery because it's further away, and it's just bigger. And eventually it becomes a dark night of the soul because you're trying to figure out the nature of existence by looking at existence doesn't work. You're looking at the field. So who's looking at the field? The mystery of existence is who's looking.
Oh yeah, who's looking. And another thing, if you look at mathematics, and if you get twice as close to something, eternally, you never get there. You're half a mile, you're a quarter of a mile, you're an eighth of a mile, you're a 16th of a mile.
Well, that's why we invented calculus, so we could kind of fudge that over.
Yeah, but you'll never get there. All right, I guess, Rajan?
Yeah, we have, of course, we'll play Damodarastakam, around 12 minutes.
What's on a few, what'd you say?
I said, like, we'll play Damodarastakam.
Oh, Damodarastakam,
nice,
okay, I heard,
nice.
okay.
Wonderful.
Great.
It's around 12 minutes.
Okay, that's very nice. Always good to hear.
Yeah.
Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Rajamanam Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Rajamanam Yashodabhyolukaladhavamanam Yashodabhyolukaladhavamanam Paramrishtamatyantato drutya gopya Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Rajamanam Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Rajamanam Rudantam muhurnetra yugmam rijantam Karambhoja yugmena satanka netram Rudantam muhurnetra yugmam rijantam Karambhoja yugmena satanka netram Muhushvasakam patrirekhanka kantha Stitagraivam damodaram bhaktibadham Muhushvasakam patrirekhanka kantha Stitagraivam damodaram bhaktibadham Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Vrajamanam Namamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Vrajamanam Itirdriksvalilabhir Anandakunde Swagosham nimajjantam akhyaapayantam Itirdriksvalilabhir Anandakunde Swagosham nimajjantam akhyaapayantam भक्तैर्जितत्वं पुनः प्रेमतस्तं शतावृत्ति वन्दे तदीयेषिताग्नेषु भक्तैर्जितत्वं पुनः प्रेमतस्तं शतावृत्ति वन्दे नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानं नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् वरं देवमोक्षं न मोक्षावधिं वा न चान्यं वृणेऽहं वरेशादपीह वरं देवमोक्षं न मोक्षावधिं वा न चान्यं वृणेऽहं वरेशादपीह इदं ते वपुर्नाथ गोपाल बालम् सदा मे मनस्या विरास्तं किमन्यै इदं ते वपुर्नाथ गोपाल बालं सदा मे मनस्या विरास्तं किमन्यै नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् इदं ते मुखाम्भोजम् अत्यन्तनीलय ऋतं कुन्तलै स्निग्धैरक्तैश्च गोप्या इदं ते मुखाम्भोजम् अत्यन्तनीलय ऋतं कुन्तलै स्निग्धरक्तैश्च गोप्या मुहुश्चुम्बितं बिम्बरक्ताधरं मे मनस्य विरास्तं अलं लक्षलाभय मुहुश्चुम्बितं बिम्बरक्ताधरं मे मनस्य विरास्तं अलं लक्षलाभय नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् नमामीश्वरं सच्चिदानन्दरूपं लसत्कुण्डलं गोकुले व्रजमानम् नमो देवदामोदरानन्त विष्णु प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजालाभिमग्नं नमो देवदामोदर आनन्त विष्णु देवदामोदरानन्त विष्णु प्रसीद प्रभो दुःखजालाभिमग्नं Atmajau Baddha Murtyaiva Yadva Tvaya Mochitau Bhakti Bhajau Kritau Cha Kuberatmajau Baddha Murtyaiva Yadva Tvaya Mochitau Bhakti Bhajau Kritau Cha Tatha Prema Bhaktim Swakame Prayacha Namokshe Graho Mesti Damodareha Tatha Prema Bhaktim Swakame Prayacha Namokshe Graho Mesti Damodareha Namamishwaram Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Rajamanam Namamishwaram Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Rajamanam Namaste Studamne Spuradipti Dhamne Tvadiyodarayatha Vishwasya Dhamne Namaste Studhamne Spuradipti Dhamne Tvadiyodarayatha Vishwasya Dhamne Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tobhyam Namo Radhikaya Tvadiya Priyaya Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tobhyam Namamishwaram Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Rajamanam Namamishwaram Satchidananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Rajamanam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Rajamanam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Rajamanam
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Thank
Hare Bol.
Happy
Well,
Kartik.
Happy Kartik. We'll hope to see some of you tomorrow for the Kirtan program.
Yes.
See you all tomorrow.
Okay, Jai.
Hare
Bill, we'll see you
Krishna.
too.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And Prabhuji, for November 6th, our timing is now going to be 11 to 1.
Yes,
11 to
yes.
1.
Yes, we saw that.
Yeah. Not 10:30 to 12 we are talking earlier, right?
Yeah, we saw that.
11
We
to
saw
1.
that. Yes, they changed. Yes.
Okay,
So-
and then, yeah. And we have the lineup done, so I'll send the lineup.
Okay.
And
Great.
do you have all your singers
Yeah, he
lined
said-
up then?
He says the lineup.
From some from outside this country, right?
India.
We even have Gokulandra Prabhu joining us from Vrindavan.
Ah,
Wonderful.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wonderful.
So nice.
It's a virtual gathering? Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's virtual. It's on Zoom, Prabhuji.
Oh, okay, good, good.
So it's on Zoom. And yeah, this year also we'll do on Zoom. Then next year, I think we should be able to get in person.
Spring, we can have another one of the
Hopefully.
wonderful.
Yeah. So
Well, thank you so
please
much.
reserve your calendar. Reserve your calendar, November 6th, 11 to 1 in the morning.
We
Calendar already.
remember very well.
And we will
You
look
have to-
for,
Yeah.
and that same day in the evening at the temple, there's a Govardhan Puja celebration. So be a nice day for hearing and celebrating.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So see you tomorrow. Those of you who are coming to the Kirtan.
Yes,
And
yeah, see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Haribo.
Hare Bol, Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.